Okay, folks, we're going to transition here. Thank you for your patience and flexibility, but I think we're set to go a little bit later than planned, but that's all right. WCTV is still recording, and with that, and seeing that we have a quorum, both for those that are attending in person as well as remote, I'd like to call the March 31st, 2025 Wildwood School Building Committee to order. As always, if we can begin with a roll call, please.
Diane Allen.
Here.
Greg Bendel.
Here.
Kate Bissell. Here. Dr. Brand.
Here.
Kevin Kyra. Michael Camosio.
Here.
Justin Couché.
Here.
Marianne Galezzo.
Here.
Nicholas Golden.
Here.
Christine Holleran.
Here.
John Holloway. Dennis Kelly.
Here.
Paul Melorani.
Here.
Craig Miner.
Here.
Christine Murray.
Here.
Judy O'Connell.
Here.
Christine Pendergast.
Here.
David Ragsdale.
Here.
Paul Ruggiero.
Here.
Stacy Scott. Eric Schlegel.
Here.
Stephen Turner.
Here.
Myself here.
Great, thank you, everyone. We're going to pass over item number 2, which is the approval of minutes from the March 25th meeting. Those we do not have this evening, so we'll have to take those up for approval at our next meeting. Moving on to item number 3 is discussion and approval of project scope and budget, really the primary reason that we are here for this meeting tonight. With that, Ronnie?
And turn it over to Lee.
Sorry, Lee.
Sure. So we mentioned this a little bit in the community forum. We have a construction cost estimate that's been presented of $137.7 million. We've worked with the town manager over the last week, as well as Fontaine and Julie from SMMA, to kind of come up with the full project cost, which is the construction cost plus all the soft cost, which includes furnishings, loose furnishings, technology, design and management fees, contingencies, lots of different contingencies, as I mentioned, right, about 10% through the design. And we are estimating out to the start of construction, which is about 18 months from now. So we spent some time making sure that the project, in our estimation collectively, was fairly well risk protected against the future. We only get one bite at the apple, so to speak, to be able to go out to the community and get them to support this project and this budget. So we have looked from the PDP program that we started with, as Eric mentioned before, we had a range of 194 to about $214 million at the PDP stage. When we got to PSR, that came down a little bit to 177 to 196. And now at the end of schematic design with our completed estimate, we are estimating a project cost total of $173,250,626, which amounts to just over $1,000 per square foot. And again, this is for a construction start of about 18 months from now. And these are all of them kind of together so you can see the progress. And you've heard us talk a lot over, the years of what our goal was to try and keep us within that range as we went from phase to phase based on the decisions that you all have helped make during the course of this on what the project scope is. So we're happy, that we're on the very low end or below the range low end that we were before. And at the same time, from our perspective, we think that we've added enough contingency to take care of some of the unknowns from the design perspective. A design contingency, which is to cover the things that Fontaine couldn't see in the drawings because we haven't drawn them yet. We have a pretty good idea of what goes into needing to be completed for the building, but there are some unknowns that we have covered in that contingency. Fontaine also carries a contingency within their cost estimating too for that same reason. Outside of the construction, on the owner's side in that soft cost that we've been talking about, there's a construction contingency in there for the owner, which is 5% of the project, and another owner's contingency for any type of services that we couldn't expect or understand at this point in the project. And it's important to know that as it continues on, money can be moved from line item to line item. If we're not spending it because we risk protected and that risk doesn't show itself, then the owner can put that into contingency, and if it's not spent, that eventually goes back at the end of the project. So just from my sake, there's obviously been other stakeholders that have been helped into the process of building this, and I would certainly welcome any of that input too, from either Fontaine, SMMA, or Eric.
Well, yeah, so I just want to, I'll speak to it real briefly. I really want to, I appreciate Julie and Lee spending multiple afternoons with me going through this. I want to let the committee know that, I was guided not just by their expertise, but also by historical information that I pulled down from the MSBA about what these soft costs have been for other elementary school projects that are in the pipeline since 2014. So looking at the percentages of those costs, comparing them to our costs, I think the costs that we have on here are reasonable, especially since they include what I think is an extra buffer everybody's thinking about of concern for what may happen with respect to the tariff issue and certain other, costs that are outside of our control. So I feel like, given that that's all baked into this number, for us to come in at below the bottom end of our range, and the kind of the soft costs with respect to the OPM fees and the architect fees to be really consistent with what the fees for other projects with completely different experts that have happened with MSBA since 2014, to have that level of consistency at least made me feel like we're operating in a reasonable, rational manner with this particular budget. So again, I would appreciate everybody's time into it, but I didn't force Fontaine to come in to talk with me.
I'm glad you spoke first, because I like the way you said the stuff we can control and the stuff we can't control, right? Like, my immediate reaction, I was virtual for the last meeting, so I didn't get a chance to share this, but like, this is great news. Like, this committee has been crystal clear with expectations for the design team, and they have listened and they have translated the stuff that we collectively can control into a number that has like steadily gone down. And as the new kids on the team, we don't often step into a project where that's the case. Like, to be able to so immediately do an estimate and deliver such good news is awesome. To your point, there's stuff outside of our control, and collectively we are protecting the town and the committee, against some of that unknown, but a little bit of luck, like, that trend can continue, hopefully. And as the design comes into clarity and we continue to estimate, and some of the uncertainty in the market starts to firm up, call me a glass half full kind of person, but I think this is all really, really good stuff.
Actually, let Christine go first. She had the hand up first.
I just want to confirm that what we're looking at of 173 million is prior to any reimbursement.
Correct.
So for anybody watching at home,
Correct.
that is not what we will be responsible for.
I have a two-parter that's building on that. First is, and to be clear, this is with the furnishings, so with the furniture in the building, for the folks at home in lay person's terms. Can you just one more time explain what makes this number different from the number we just talked about in the forum? And the second question I have is, we have an item here that's reimbursement rate percentage. It's got I didn't look at the footnote yet, I'm sorry, that's my bad. But that's an estimate that's baked in already. What is that based on? So I guess the first question is, can you restate the difference between the big numbers and what's this reimbursement rate?
So the difference between construction cost and project cost, construction cost would be everything that's in Fontaine's contract. The project cost is the stuff that's outside of that. So it's all of the new furnishings for the building, all of the new technology that's going to go into the building, design fees, OPM fees, insurance costs, and many layers of contingencies really make up that difference. To your question about the reimbursement that was in this form, it's called a 3011 form. It's an MSBA authored form. And you can see there's lots of fine print in there, right? There's a whole more to this workbook that has to deal with their incentives and reimbursement and caps. You are right, there is a place in there where we have their base reimbursement rate. We are also anticipating we're going to get 1 point extra reimbursement for maintenance, because the town has done a good job maintaining these 60-year-old buildings up to this point, as well as the direction from this committee was we want a sustainable building that's at a reasonable cost. We've been able to collect all 4 available sustainable green incentive points right now. So we're carrying 5 extra additional incentive points into that on top of the base rate. Again, this is our calculation. They have to come back and agree with us. So to Christine's point, the $174 million, that is a project cost only. There is going to be the MSBA grant that'll go on top of that, which is what we'll be working with MSBA between now and June 25th to bring that cost down as a local share.
Mary Ann has her-
Mary Ann, just a second, Vivian. Mary Ann?
Sure, just a quick question. I know Lee and Eric have dived into this numbers. What is the percentage of the contingency overall for all the contingencies for the project? Is it 10 or 15%?
There is 12.5% inside of the construction cost, and there's another 7% outside.
6.5.
7.5.
6.5.
6.5 for project cost, sorry. 5% for an owner's construction contingency and 1.5% for the owner's services contingency.
And Mary Ann, just to
I'm
be,
sorry.
just to be clear, I just, so,
1.5?
yeah, 1.5 is the owner's contingency. Just to be clear, the control of those contingencies that are outside of the construction costs rests with us. Is that correct?
All of the contingencies rest with you.
Can you talk that out for a minute? What do you mean by that? Say that again?
In other words, the contingencies are set up so that the access to the contingency has to be through
Approval.
the owner, not by the consultant.
Christine, I can explain it. We call
No, I
it
get
3
what you're saying
buckets.
now.
Well, there's 3 buckets.
Yeah.
Right? So Fontaine has one. That's their CT. Then our hard cost contingency, which is construction changes that are not things that they could have foreseen. And then there's the soft cost. But all 3 of those buckets need to get approved by the school building
Understood.
committee before they can get changed.
So follow-up question on that is, do we incentivize any of those 3 buckets to dip into those contingencies as little as possible? I.e., Jesus, 6.8 million. 6.8 million on the first line item, right? If we say to you guys, if you can save,
No.
call it 50% of that bucket.
No.
Not in the public
Not
sector.
the public.
In the
Okay.
private sector, you could do
private.
that. In the public sector,
That's
we'll
why
do
I'm
our best to
private.
do it anyways, so that you say good things to your neighbors.
Vivian and then Stephen?
Can I just do a follow-up to my question real quick?
Sure, Mary.
Sure.
We're talking, Eric, roughly about 20%, right, of the budget
It's
overall contingency?
I think it's like 18%, I think.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Vivian?
Thank you. If you could just repeat the percentage, because Mary Ann had the same, we were on the same wavelength in asking the question. What was the first one, the construction contingency? What's the percentage?
6.5.
The construction contingency, that's 6.887, that's 5%.
And then instead of a 2% for owner's contingency,
It's 1.5%.
we're holding a 1.5. Are we also, my second question is, we know historically that site will have ledge. Are we holding money, and in which line item, for ledge removal and blasting? Because that will become very costly. Yes, no?
Apologize, I missed the front end of it because I was trying to confirm something with Rob. Could you say that again?
Knowing that historically this town has a lot of ledge,
Yep.
and that site will most likely have ledge as well. Are we holding money for ledge, and where, in which line item?
Comment on that?
I don't know if we have a detail in the estimate, but we do have an overall design contingency in the 137, that's part of this number, that if we were to take a deeper dive into the geotechnical and figured out that there is ledge, I don't think that we felt like the whole site was covered in it. There may be pockets based on the geotech that I think I've heard, but I don't think that we,
The geotech reports that have been done so far have been very positive. That said, there's money being held.
Okay.
right.
And you're holding it in your contingency, not in any of the
So-
line items?
The contingencies you guys are discussing are outside of the construction. The construction estimate still has contingency within it for design, excuse me, for design to progress, plus some unforeseen conditions covered,
Okay.
such as in site and dispersed throughout, correct?
Okay.
Stephen?
So, first of all, I thank all of you for the effort in this. it's, as a taxpayer in the town, this is really good to see all of the effort, all of the work. But what I'm most happy about is the fact that we have not talked about the educational programming as these numbers have gone down. That stayed consistent. So from my perspective, all the contingency discussion is insurance that we don't have to impact the educational program. So from my perspective, the question I come to is if we go through 18% contingency, then it's educational program. So we can't go through the contingency to that point, because that's where we start to impact the children and the learning experience for them there. So the only question is 18 point whatever enough to avoid getting to educational programming? Should it be 20? And I know it's hard to know, and you guys are experts in the different elements of it. But that's the one thing that would keep me up at night is, whatever cost overruns related to steel, and suddenly we have to change what we're doing for the children because we didn't. I know it's a tough place to be doing this work.
So Julie and Lee can say, I think that was the first question out of my mouth was, do we have enough in that? Are we being careful enough without being too careful and padding it too much so that it's not a reasonable budget? And I think that we're walking on that line where I do think that.
Thank you.
Paul?
So we're only saying out loud about half of the numbers on this page tonight. So per this document, the total project budget is $173 million, okay? And we're talking about carrying 5 of the incentive points that Lee was talking about earlier. And on this, and I know that we won't know until June 25 what MSBA is going to give us back, but you're estimating here it's going to be 52.84%, is that right?
Yes.
Ish, okay. So that being said, that adds up to about a $59 million reimbursement, what you're saying. So I just want to get it all on the table so that everybody at home knows what we're talking about. So that 173, simple arithmetic here, 173 million minus the 59 million, we're looking at a project cost, a town cost of $113 million. Is that right?
That's our best estimate right now.
Best
right? Until we
estimate. I
finalize
want
the
people to know that. That's what we're talking about.
Yes.
We're not talking $173 million. We're talking realistically $113 million that we have to contend with here in Wilmington. And I think it's going to even go lower than that if we come up with some creative ideas on the town side.
Yeah, it's just, when people look at the reimbursement rate of 52.84,
Yep.
I don't want to give the impression that you take 173 million and you immediately, divide it by the percentage, because there's a lot of items in here that are deemed already ineligible, like, for example, the FF&E furniture and fixtures and technology, we're carrying above, which is great that we are, above the MSBA standard, so portion of that will be considered ineligible. There's the gym that we already know is ineligible, so all of those removal, we're anticipating 59.5 million reimbursement.
Okay. Thank you.
Diane?
Thank you.
Diane Allen?
Diane?
Yes, my question is regarding the reimbursement from MSBA. Where did you get that number from?
So the MSBA publishes that number on their website, and going into the project, we were deemed 47.84%. That is subject to change every year, and it's not locked in until we meet with the MSBA on June 25th. So that's the number that we've been going with, because that's what's published on their website. And then the incentive points that were added to it to get to the 52.
Okay, I saw that. And then part B was the 18% inflation that we're talking about, the 18%, does that include inflation, that 18% contingency? Does that include inflation?
Diane, that's our attempt to account for future escalation, so we're building that contingency into the project, to your point, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And if I could just say something that's probably obvious to most of the people in this room, but just for people outside, the reason why we can't give a definitive number now as to what the reimbursement is going to be is because MSBA has to evaluate whether or not all the spaces that we are saying are reimbursable or not reimbursable, they have to agree with us. And if they agree with all our determinations, that's gonna be what we get back. And if they don't, we're gonna fight back like we had before to get them to come to our side as close as possible.
Right,
Is that fair?
if they disagree with us on incentive points, right, we'll have a discussion as the same we would with ineligible to be able to try and express our views on why we came up with these numbers. But you're right, it is subject to negotiation on a whole bunch of different things, including what the base reimbursement rate is. Like Julie mentioned, we're going with what's published. They changed that, and it's not guaranteed until they sign us up finally.
And not to go too far down a rabbit hole, but the setting of the base rate, do they consider macroeconomic factors? Like, are they also looking at like tariff stuff? Or is it like, what's their secret sauce to decide the base rate?
My understanding is that is not in the secret sauce as far as what's happening out there nationally. They look at communities based on, 3 different factors,
So
I don't exactly know what those 3 factors are. It's kind of above my pay grade, but they do adjust that every year.
Okay.
And they publish them. So we're just not aware of if there's going to be any changes between now and our board meeting.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Can I ask a question about, in the FF&E lines, we're above the cap of the 1,200 per student, but that's based on the 755 enrollment. And I'm just curious, whereas our actual enrollment will not be 755 because it's 755 plus. And whereas I know when we did the sheet initially, the pre-K wasn't supported, but really they do support it. Is that not accounted for here?
That's part of the rationale on why we went above what MSBA gives. I think it's $1,200 per student that they set, and that's their cap about what they'll participate in. We recognize that we have pre-K students, and we also recognize, based on experience, that that isn't enough to furnish a new school. So that's why we're carrying $2,200 per the 755 on both of those line items, which is, above that, and that's what we're seeing with our projects that are coming in right now that are furnishing complete new schools, including pre-K programs that aren't in those enrollment numbers.
Yeah, that's very much in line with what we're seeing as well.
Thanks, Kate. Yes.
So, as we move forward, we start selecting lighting.
Let me pull up your picture.
You gotta change the color of the
Scissor
parade.
lips, custom scissor lips.
He needs to save on the lighting so he could get the scissor lift with his name on it. Yeah.
But, no, as we start moving forward, we start selecting more and more of the product being used, we could actually lower some of these numbers and the cost as well, right? Because these numbers are based on, we don't know the exact product in every piece, right? Or do we?
We've selected a basis of design product for all of the stuff that we're looking at, and mass public procurement requires us to have 3 equals for every single product that we specify. So we have a basis of design, we found 3 equals. That's the basis of what Fontaine has developed that on. So that's our kind of bar that we're starting with, and our bar isn't very extravagant because of the work that you guys have done with us on lighting and what the needs are and what. So we're starting all of this to build this project. A lot of thought has gone into what those materials are and the messaging that you've given to us about what you're looking for and where the priorities are. So we didn't start way up here on things. We started here to try and deliver at that cost. So we will be, looking at all of these materials to kind of get a sense of, is our construction cost changing in estimates, right? We're going to do 3 more estimates after the vote as we progress to be able to have check-ins. How are we doing? Those are opportunities for us to enact, potential value engineering ideas, change course and materials selection, reprioritize. Again, we're trying to get to a point, Stephen's point was we don't want to cut things that we talked about for the educational program, but we think we've built this project reasonable enough that we're going to be able to do that and be able to have some wiggle room. Yes, potentially there is opportunity to come down as this continues to develop.
Because I know when we built the town hall and as the building committee met on that one, we originally designed it with slate floors and some other options, tiling all the way up in bathrooms. And then when we were going to go out for pricing, we did some add-ons or changes and the price both ways. So if we came in low, we could add them back in, which we were able to do. So I'm assuming that would be the same case here, where hey, Nirvana is this, but, based on how things are pricing out, we could substitute this. And if we come back, we'll meet as a group and bring that back into the project. And that's one of those ways to come in cost effective, yet get what you need in the long run.
We also have the benefit of doing construction management at risk to be able to have our partner at the table when we're saying, if we're trying to do a 6-foot wainscot of ceramic tile down all the hallways, right? Well, what is that if we go to 4 feet everywhere? What's that potential change? So in real time, we can have those discussions as we're changing the dials on what we're putting into the project.
I would think of it, tonight you're approving a budget, you're not signing an invoice.
Yeah. No, I just want to make sure
Right?
we
Like,
realize all the different
But
options.
in the spirit of a couple different comments, like, that's the goal, is to continue to hear and listen and drive value.
Diane, you have another question?
Yes, one more question I have. The OPM and the architectural fees, are the percentages typical?
So I'll answer that to save them from having to answer it. When we met to discuss those fees, I did go back and look, like I said, at the last 10 years of elementary schools that were approved through MSBA. So I was looking at the specific examples that we're talking about here, and we are very consistent with the fees that were in those earlier projects.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
So we need to vote, correct, on this?
We do,
We're voting for submission of this to the MSBA.
correct.
So we will
I'll
need
make a motion.
Second.
Okay, motion second, discussion? Okay, seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Diane Allen,
Yes,
Greg Bendel,
Yes.
Kate Bissell,
Yes.
Dr. Brand,
Yes.
Michael Camosio,
Yes.
Justin Couche,
Yes.
Mary Ann Galezzo,
Yes.
Nick, you seconded, Christine Holleran,
Yes.
John, Dennis Kelly,
Yes.
Paul Melorani,
Yes.
Craig Minor,
Yes.
Christine Murray,
Yes.
Judy O'Connell,
Yes.
Christine Pendergast,
Yes.
David Ragsdale,
Yes.
Paul Ruggiero,
Yes.
Eric Schlegel,
Yes.
Stephen Turner,
Yes.
and myself made the motion. The motion carries unanimously.
All right, fantastic, great, thank you, everyone. So just checking, I don't think there's anything further from Dorr and Whittier this evening. So we'll move to item number 5, discussion correspondence. Any new items have not come up? Okay. Questions? No, no other questions. Public comments? There's no one here in person. No, that's not true. There is, but public. Anyone at
pressure.
home?
4, but no hands raised.
Okay. Thank you for, again, an awful lot of time from the committee this evening. Our next meeting with this full committee, when we'll engage in the discussion of submission, is Tuesday, April 15th. And
Point of information, Mr. Chairman. Weren't we supposed to approve some minutes? Is that, I feel like the guy was like.
we passed over that. That will be at the next meeting, so.
That way.
They weren't ready since it was such a short.
I just want to hang out longer.
All right, it's all right. Motion to adjourn,
So moved. Seconded.
multiple motions, multiple seconds. Roll call vote, please. Thank you.
And Christine. Diane Allen,
yes.
Greg Bendel,
Yes.
Kate Bissell,
Yes.
Dr. Brand,
Yes.
Michael Camosio,
Yes.
Justin Couche,
Yes.
Mary Ann Galezzo,
Yes.
Nick Golden,
Yes.
Christine Holleran, Dennis Kelly,
Yes.
Paul Melorani,
Yes.
Craig Minor,
Yes.
Christine Murray, Judy O'Connell, Christine Pendergast,
Yes.
David Ragsdale,
Yes.
Paul Ruggiero,
Yes.
and Eric, you made the motion, Stephen Turner.
Yes.
And myself, yes, motion carried. Have a great
Thanks.
night,
Good
everyone.
evening, everyone. Thank you.